Welcome to No Happiness, the podcast where we explore how we seek, find, and sustain happiness in some of the most unusual places. Today, I'm welcoming back Dr. Sprouse. In our first conversation, we explored his work in addiction medicine and his perspective on recovery. Today, we're diving deeper into a framework he's developed called the Stress Reducer Loop, a model that challenges conventional thinking about addiction and offers a hopeful, shame-free path toward change. Welcome back.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm hoping that by the end of this show, we help some person today.
I'm quite confident we will. And like we talked about before, if it helps just one person, then I feel like we both believe our work was a success. So, for those who may have missed our first conversation, can you briefly introduce yourself and explain what led you to develop the Stress Reducer Loop?
Right. So I'm a primary care doctor, and I was working in my office for 38 years, and I've had the luxury of retiring a couple years ago. So it's been awesome. I really enjoyed my retirement, by the way. But while I was doing that, I found some new insights into where our stresses are coming from. And the insight I brought to my first book, Highway to Your Happy Place, A Roadmap to Less Stress, was that the majority of human stresses are side effects to the skills we have. So it means we can envision the future. Yay, great skill, but we have the side effect of worrying about it. So the book was trying to figure out how to keep the skills and get rid of the side effects. And then I added this other thing where you go, hey, we got to find where you want to be, because too many of my patients saying, I know where I don't want to be, but I don't know where I do want to be. So we developed this happy place that's different for every person. But what I found was they all had the same rooms. They just decorated them differently. So it had things like gratitude and safety and a bunch of different rooms. But as I was doing all that, what I found was, hey, if you're doing something to reduce, if you have stress, you have to do something to reduce your stress so you can get wrong with your life. And what I found is people do all kinds of different things to reduce their stress. People ask me what I do, and I'm like, I watch TV, I exercise, I read a book, I go sit out on my dock, whatever, right? But when the stress reducer that you picked starts causing stress, well, now you get into trouble. So I use this example where somebody goes to work and have a bad day, and they go, I'm having such a bad day, and they stop off at a bar to get a couple drinks. And they drink a couple drinks of alcohol, and they're feeling better, right? Their stress reducer's working. But then as they're driving home, the cop pulls them over, and they get a DUI. So now their stress reducer just caused stress.
Stress producer.
That's it. That's the word I use, right? So then they get home and they talk to their wife and they go, honey, you won't believe I had a horrible day at work. And then I just got a DUI. I'm going to go get a beer. And the wife's like, are you kidding me? You just got a DUI. What do you mean? What? He goes, well, alcohol's my stress reducer. So what happens then is every time they're under stress, they use their stress reducer. But now because it's producing stress, now they end up in a loop. And the loop is stress reducer, more stress reducer, and now you're stuck.
Yeah, like a hamster on a wheel.
Yes. And the thing that really gets them stuck is that they've been doing this stress reducer long enough that the brain does what it's supposed to do and makes it automatic. So if you go and brush your teeth this morning, if I said to you, how do you brush your teeth? You're like, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Because you don't even think about it, just as automatic. Because your brain says, yeah, we don't want to worry about spending energy on trying to figure out how to brush our teeth. We're just going to do it the same way every time, and we'll just make it automatic. And that's what happens to stress reducers. They become automatic. So you don't have to think about them anymore. They just happen. And so now when you say, you know what, that stress reducer is starting to cause problems, I need to not do that anymore. Now you're stuck because your brain's going, no. You're under stress. The trigger goes off. Go do your stress reducer. You're like, no, I'm not doing that. And they get stuck because your brain wins most of the time.
Right. Well, and I think that's a really frustrating piece for me as someone who's struggled with addiction, is that there's so much stigma and judgment and shame. And it's like, whoa. I'm no different than you are in that my brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's just, as you had kind of mentioned, my stress reducer is different than yours. You know what I mean? And yet people
Absolutely.
judge so heavily towards someone with an addiction. Like, just stop. Why don't you just stop?
Yeah. Well, this is why. So I didn't make up this model to answer those problems. But the model that I came up with through my own work, solves a lot of those problems, not because I was trying to, just because the model does solve the problems. So, and we'll get into it more as we go along.
Yeah. So you often say people aren't broken, they're trying to solve a problem. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So what that means is, in the models that we use right now, that someone has something wrong with them. They have a disease, or they're morally deficient, or they're weak-willed, or there's something wrong with their brain, or they have a personality disorder. There's something wrong with them. And here's the real problem. And it's permanent. It doesn't go away. Like, once you're a diseased addict, that's forever. And it doesn't matter whether you're using it or not using it. You're still an addict, right? Or an ex-addict. What I found in my model is the process that goes into forming a stress reducer loop is all normal. Like, you have stress just like everybody else. You picked a stress reducer just like everybody else. Your brain made it into an automatic track just like everybody else. And you said, hey, I don't want to keep doing this anymore, but you struggle because it's really hard to inhibit that loop just like everybody else. So it's all normal. And the difference is the side effects to whatever you've picked. So if you read a lot of books, you get a different side effect than if you picked heroin. But the process that got you there is the same.
Gotcha.
So here's what I say to people. Like, look, I'm trying to lose weight. I want to keep my weight down because I want to stay healthy and be able to exercise. But when I'm stressed out, my car just turns into a convenience store and I got a chocolate donut in my mouth. And I'm like, how did that happen? I didn't wait. Where did that come from? Why didn't I just say no? Because humans are the only organism that can inhibit a track. Like, we can go, see that track? No, don't use that track. And we can do that. Amazing, right? It's an incredible skill. But it turns out I'm not that good at it. So I say, like, if I'm at a function and there's a dessert tray there, and I'm like, and I walk past the dessert tray once, then I walk past it again. And the 10th time I walk past it, by the 11th time, God, that chocolate donut looks really good. And you're eating the chocolate donut.
Yeah.
So it's like, right. So our ability to inhibit is there, but it's not that great, which is why people tend to have a relapse or a lapse, because the triggers are there. You know, you're stressed out. The treatment's there, and your brain's going, do it. And you're like, and comes up with all these reasons why it's okay. And you're right. So what this model talks about then is it takes it away from, because here's what people say when you lapse. They go, what? Why were you so stupid? Why did you do that? Why is your ability to choose so dumb and so weak? Like, what the heck is the matter with you? Right? In my model, what I say to them, like, dude, you were inhibiting this for a certain amount of time, whether it's a couple days or a couple months or 20 years. So what changed that your ability to inhibit that track stopped working? And always, invariably, it's some stressful thing happened and the trigger went off stronger than it had been in the past. And they had less energy to keep that inhibiting up, and they end up lapsing.
Well, and I find that really interesting, because that was one issue I kind of had with the traditional 12-step program, was that they put so much emphasis on the days. And while that's great, people tended to, when they would have a relapse, to forget, you had 75 days of, and so the counting to me seemed a little bit counterintuitive as far as making people feel shameful having to walk in and say, I screwed up again, and
Absolutely. I had a lady once that she was doing a lecture, and here was how her introduction is. Hi, I'm Jill. I'm a alcoholic. And you're like, okay. She goes, now I haven't drank in 25 years. And you're like, well, that's good, right? So I don't know why you're still calling yourself an alcoholic, but whatever. So she goes, well, one day I was in Italy on a vacation, and the menu was in Italian, and I ordered this drink, and it came out, and it turned out it had alcohol in it. And I'm like, oh, so now I've relapsed. And when I went back to my AA program, they're like, oh, now you got to start all over again. And you're like, that's literally insane.
Yeah.
You had 25 years of sobriety, and because of one mistake of translation, you're going to start all the way from back 25 years? No, that doesn't even make sense. So in this model, what it says is, look, you got this track in your brain, and it's going to be there forever because my medical people, aren't smart enough to figure out how to zap out the track so it's gone. So what you're left with is you got this track in your brain that you're never going to get rid of. But that track doesn't have to be the defining of you. Like, I don't want people to go, I'm an alcoholic or I'm an ex-alcoholic. What I want them to say is I'm a non-drinker.
Yeah.
That's the label I want you to take. But remember that you have a track in your brain that doesn't take much to get back on. And what I say then is I separate lapse from relapse. So lapse is, I screwed up. I was in Italy. I ordered the drink and I didn't realize it. And I did it one time, but I haven't done it since. So that's good, right? So what I say to them, out of the last 25 years, you've used one time. So that makes you 99.999% successful. Yay for you, okay? And let's get back on before relapse. So relapse is I'm back to drinking every day.
Right.
So my job as a clinician is to find people that are trying to stay sober and they lapse. And I want to find them when they lapse, not waiting until they relapse, because you're exactly right. They lapse and then people make them feel guilty and they make them feel shameful. And guess what that does? It increases their stress. And then they go, I just wasted 25 years. I'm such an idiot. I'm going to go, that stresses me out. I'm going to go get a drink. No, right? So what I talk about then is I'm not trying to increase your stress. I'm trying to decrease your stress.
Yeah. I think this is so brilliant, and there is such a need, because the 12-step programs, they're antiquated. They were written back, in the 40s, and they haven't evolved or changed since then. And, we still don't have all the answers and solutions, but there's certainly different paths. In my opinion, there's not a one size fits all, but what you're producing here, what you're stating, I think is going to be really a game changer in the world of addiction.
Wow, that's what I see. Now, what'll happen is the world will tell me whether it's accurate or not, because if people come and they get better, then I'm on the right track. If they're not, then maybe this isn't the right track. I'm not here to help people who've gone to AA and got better. Like, that's not the person I'm looking for. Like, I've met plenty of people and they swear by AA, and I'm like, you know what? If AA works for you, go for it, right?
Absolutely.
What I'm looking for is the 80% that it doesn't work for. These are the numbers that I use. I tell people that addiction treatment is successful about 20% of the time. That means it's not successful 80% of the time. But that's misleading, because it turns out that only 20% of people who have addictions, or in my model, stress reducer loop, come to get treatment.
Right.
So you're only getting 20% of 20%. So you're like, that's not good at all, right?
No.
So that's the person I'm looking for. Somebody here's what I'm looking for. Somebody who recognizes that the stress reducer they're using is causing problems and they need some help getting out of it. They need help breaking their loop. 2 is that they're committed. They're not just like, well, I want somebody who's committed. It's like, no, this needs to change, right? And somebody who's either tried a program before and it didn't work, or they're not happy with the program they're in. Yeah, come to me and let me see what I can do for you.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I wish I would have known you all those years ago. I mean, I have been in and out of AA and feeling like a failure. And the reality was, like, it was failing me. They're just, I wasn't the failure. And
well, and you were working really hard.
Yeah.
And it's not that AA doesn't have some good things, right? I mean, what AA does is it becomes your stress reducer.
Right.
So when you're freaking out, you go, I got to go to a meeting. And it's really cheap because you can go to a meeting and it doesn't cost you anything. And there's meetings everywhere. So when you're stressed out, you're like, well, I got to go to a meeting, or I got to talk to my mentor or
sponsor.
Sponsor, yeah. And it's like, yeah, so it becomes your stress reducer. But I've seen people have AA turn into their loop.
Right.
Because I had a lady who said, well, my husband used to drink all the time and go to the bars and I never got to see him. And now he's in AA. And I'm like, well, that's great. She goes, no, not really. She goes, now he's at AA meetings all the time. So I still don't get to see him. I'm like, oh, so AA is now causing a stress reducer. He's in a stress reducer loop.
Yeah. Interesting. Because, I believe that it should be, I don't like calling yourself an addict for the rest of your life. That doesn't feel good for me. And so I always struggled with that. And then also that like AA is almost in my mind was supposed to be like a life raft to help you get across to the other side. You shouldn't need to sit in that life raft forever. And yet it does become this, I have to trauma bond essentially with everybody that's the same. And if I don't, I won't succeed rather than getting across the river and being done.
Absolutely. So what I see then is, so AA, here's what AA does. And here's what we do in the medical community, to be honest with you. We go, you're an addict, so you have to put a dunce cap on. So now you're walking around your neighborhood and your school and wherever else you are with a dunce cap on. So people look like, what the heck is the matter with you? Why you got the dunce cap on? Right? So when you go to an AA meeting, everybody has a dunce cap on. So guess what? You feel comfortable. And no one asks you why you have a dunce cap on because they know.
Right.
And you're real comfortable. But then you go out back into the real world and now you feel weird again. I'm like, no. What I want people is you're normal. Like take the dunce cap off. If you're not using, then you don't have a dunce cap. So now when you walk out into the community, people don't go, oh, why are you wearing a dunce cap? Because you don't have it on. Now, if you lapse or you relapse, okay, put the dunce cap back on. But while you're not using, you're normal. That's it, period. Right?
Right.
So this is not a permanent disease, broken, brain damage, genetically defective problem. This is you'd had stress and you found something that was working, but then it started causing problems. And now you got to stop doing it. And that's not an easy thing to do. But when you know what you're trying to do and here's the goal, instead of saying, well, I'm a sober disease person, I go, you're a normal person. What? That's something we're shooting for, right? And I'm going to take all the skills that you've been using that got you into the trouble with your stress reducer loop and use those skills to make you an awesome person, not just a sober person, an awesome person. Because the people that have been in loops are resourceful. They're really smart. Like they're doing all kinds of things to keep doing what they were doing. So when you stop doing that and you use all those energies for other things and you feel good about yourself, what? Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and there's so much more to a person than saying I'm an addict, and that's it. Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, I now choose not to pick up alcohol. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like the way it makes me behave, and I found alternatives for my stress reducer to prevent these relapses or lapses, as you like to call them. So, what role does stress play in creating and sustaining these loops?
Well, so what I found is that stress is the underlying problem. So instead of calling the treatment the problem, so what we say is, well, heroin is the problem, and we have to treat their heroin addiction, and we have to treat their heroin, and we have to treat their alcohol and their cigarettes or whatever. And it's like, that's not the problem. Those are treatments. Those are treatments for their stress. The stress is where the really problem is. So if I had a patient that came to me and they were a 400-pound person that had just developed diabetes, I can give them all kinds of medicine to get their diabetes under control. But if they lost 250 pounds, then they wouldn't need any treatment. And I feel the same way in these stress reducer loops. If I can get rid of your stresses, or at least get rid of some of them, then you don't need that treatment. Because what I see is when people, the more stress they're under, then the more often they have to use their stress reducer and the more powerful the stress reducer has to be. And that leads you to getting into a stress reducer loop. I'll use the Vietnam War as an example. During that war, 90% of the veterans that were in the war were addicted to something, heroin, alcohol, whatever. And the military is very concerned when they came back to the United States, what the heck are we going to do with all these addicts? Well, when they came back, their stress levels went way down. 80% of them just stopped because they didn't need it anymore. And that's where I want to get people. Because what I want to get out of, so the program I'm developing is called Loop Breakers. And what I'm saying to people is like, look, if you have less stress, then you don't need that stress reducer as much. And we kind of just, all we have to do is find a different stress reducer that doesn't have the same side effects and make that your automatic track. So I've come up with this thing I call WINS, which is the way you're going to do this is you're going to learn, get some wisdom. I'm going to give you some insight. And then we're going to find you a new track. And then you're going to practice that in a safe place till it becomes automatic. And then you're done, right? That's it. Then you're back to your life. Yay, right? And that's all it takes. Now, that sounds easy. And I'm not telling you, you're sitting here saying that that's easy. What I am saying is that it's straightforward and it's accurate in that it's going to use your brain skills that you have that you're really good at and try to diminish the things that you're not so good at. So what I say is, like when we talked about being able to inhibit, incredible skill. My dog does not know how to inhibit. If she's hungry, she's eating. If she has to go to the bathroom, she's having to go to the bathroom. Like there's no waiting around, right? So for humans, we can inhibit that track, but we're not that great at it. So what keeps us from being able to inhibit? And that's one of the things I talk about is deprivation. So when people feel deprived, that makes it really hard to inhibit that track. So if I looked at that donut and said, ugh, I don't like donuts anymore. They suck. They did like what you just said about alcohol. You don't like it anymore. It's like you don't like the way it makes me feel. It does all these bad things to me. I don't see that as a good thing. So why would I feel deprived if I can't use it? So I use myself as an example. I used to drink Diet Coke, and I was doing a smoke ending class. And I said, I'm going to give up something. They're like, what are you going to give up, Dr. Sprouse? I said, I'm going to give up Diet Coke. And they were like, no, you can't do that. You drink 6 Diet Cokes a day. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it, right? So I switched to water, and it was really boring. And I was like, oh, right? So then I found this flavoring called Mio, and so now I drink water with Mio. Well, guess what? I don't feel deprived that I can't drink Diet Coke. So my wife drinks Diet Coke, and we can be on an 8-hour car ride, and there's a Diet Coke sitting right next to me. And I'm like, I don't care. What do I care? Like I got my water with Mio. I'm good to go, right? So when I don't feel deprived, then it takes no energy to inhibit that track because there's nothing stimulating the track. I have an alternative track now that's gotten used so much that that's my automatic one. I don't need the other one. It's still there, but I don't ever use it because I don't need it. I don't care. So this is my fun part. I would say to my patients that like I took care of 100 patients that were on heroin. And I said to you, stop using heroin forever. And they're like, oh, I'm going to try, Dr. Sprouse. I don't know. I go, okay, well, here's what I want you to do. Don't ever eat mud again in your whole life. And they would look at me like, what? What do you mean don't ever eat mud again? I'm like, yeah, I want you to promise me you'll never eat mud again in your whole life. And they're like, okay, yeah, I think I'll never eat mud again. And I'm like, well, why can you say that so easily? And I'm like, and they go, oh, because they're not walking past the mud puddle going, ooh, that looks like really good mud. I wish you could have some of that. They don't feel deprived that they can't eat mud. So it takes no energy to not. So when you're on a stress reducer loop, the problem is that when you stop the loop, then the feeling of deprivation starts. Because while you're using or while you're doing, there's no deprivation because you're doing it. But when you stop, then the deprivation starts increasing. And this is what I say, people have to put in, and I call it quit energy, Quit. They have to use energy to quit. But when that deprivation gets stronger than their quit energy, then you get a lapse, right? So you can either jazz up their quit energy and go, okay, I'm good, you can do this, yeah, right? Or you can get rid of their deprivation, and then it takes no energy.
Interesting. When you were explaining that situation with your Diet Coke and your wife, one thing I found for myself is I don't feel deprived, but I don't like being around alcohol. And primarily, I just don't like the way people act when they're on it. And so what would you suggest to somebody who, is trying to change their stress reducer loop, but they're around people who are drinking? What do you do for that?
Yeah, well, I look at my brother, right? So my brother tells me stories when he was younger. And I was in college and medical school, so I wasn't around for these situations. But he would go to bars, and he goes, I didn't go there to have fun. I went there to get drunk. Like, I went there to get wasted. And he goes, and then he's somewhere along the line, he decided I'm going to stop, and he stopped. And he hasn't drank in like 40 years now, I think. And he's around alcohol all the time. I've been in a party with him, and I go, hey, you want a beer? And I'm like, and he goes, no. And I'm like, well, that was stupid. Why did I even ask you? That was dumb, right? I should know better than to ask you that, right? So he's figured out that, like, I'm not deprived, and he doesn't mind. He has figured out I don't mind being around alcohol, but I'm not going to be drinking. So it's like, that makes it hard. I'll tell you that right now. Like what I've seen with couples, like like my wife and I made the decision to lose some weight together, which made it way easier because if one person's trying to lose weight and the other one isn't, the environment that you're in is going to make it more difficult for you.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't make it impossible. So my wife still drinks Diet Coke and I don't. But right. So, but it definitely makes it more challenging because the trigger's there more often. And so that makes it more difficult because now you have to inhibit more often.
Right.
So if I was living by myself, there wouldn't be Diet Coke in my house. So for me to get a Diet Coke, I'd have to like get in my car and drive to the convenience store or the grocery store. There's a whole lot more work involved. If the Diet Coke's in the refrigerator, like, oh, there it is right there, right? So one of the ways to get out of that is not feeling deprived. And one of the ways to not feeling deprived is having a new track that works as well as, if not better than, the track that you were using. Then what do I care? Like,
Right.
So what I found was my water was better than Diet Coke. It was more available. It was less expensive. And I had 6 different flavors as opposed to Diet Coke that just had one. So, right. So for me, it was actually an upgrade, not a decrease.
Yeah. So what are some signs that someone that may be stuck in a loop without realizing it?
Yeah. Well, this is a big problem. This is one of the biggest problems. Like I had a person that I was working with, and he was drinking a lot of alcohol. And everybody around him could see that it was causing problems. So he'd come in with tremors, and he would have passing out spells and things like that. And when you say to him, dude, you're drinking too much alcohol, he's like, no. I think I have Parkinson's. I'm going to go to the doctor and make sure. Or I think it's a side effect of my medication, or I think whatever. And so people come up with their own rationales for why these things are happening, and they don't link the side effect to the thing they're doing. Part of it's because they don't want to, because they're like, I really want to keep drinking, so I don't really want to know. But some of it is there's really a blindness that occurs. So this is why I talk about with insights. So I had a lady came to me, and she said, oh, I really miss my sister. And I was like, well, what do you mean you miss your sister? Where is she? She goes, well, she lives in California. I was like, well, get on a plane and go see her, right? She goes, I can't get on a plane. I'm like, well, why not? She goes, well, because I smoke, and I'd not be able to smoke for 6 hours. I can't do that. And I'm like, wait, let me get this straight. Let me point this out to you. You're telling me that one of the side effects of your smoking cigarettes is that you don't get to see your sister. And she's like, whoa, wait, never thought about it like that. Wow, that's crazy. And then she decided to stop. And it's like, yeah, so sometimes, and this I do as a doctor, is I go, oh, this is causing a problem. Because sometimes people come in with alcohol and they're not having much trouble. And then I'll do a blood test and I go, yeah, your liver enzymes are irritated. That alcohol is causing problems that you can't see. And I'm telling you it's there. Other times they come up, they do this reverse thing where they go, the reason I drink is because my wife's a bitch. And you're like,
you'd drink too if you had my
yeah,
wife.
Right. The reason your wife's a bitch is because you drink, right? So They get it backward. So that is one of the things that I'm saying to people is like, you have to recognize when it's causing a problem. Because it's not easy because there's a whole bunch of reasons why you're adjusting your behavior through your intentions, right? So I was talking to another lady on a podcast, and as I was telling her about stress-free loops, she goes, I was in a loop when I was a kid. And I was like, well, what loop were you in? She goes, I was reading books all the time. I was like, what? She goes, I would read books all throughout the night. So when I would go to school the next day, I was groggy because I hadn't slept because I'd been reading. And my friends were like, hey, come out and play. And I'm like, no, I'm reading a book. And my mom was yelling at me because she's like, what are you doing staying in the room? Get outside. Da, da, da. She goes, and it went all through my high school years. And it wasn't until I got to college and someone made me read a book for school that somehow it got into her brain that this is dumb. Why am I doing all this reading? Like, I should stop doing that. And she got out of the loop. But while she was in high school, she was in a really bad loop, and it all revolved around reading books. So literally anything people do to reduce their stress can turn into a loop. And anybody who has enough stress can get into a loop. So that's where the key is. So reducing stress becomes the real focus of what this treatment's about.
Well, do you think, because I just in my observation out in the wild, I feel like the majority of people, or at least the majority of people I know, have problems with alcohol, who drink a lot of alcohol, that aren't casual, that, are the weekend warriors, but they've just managed to not have a lot of problems as as of now, or maybe they do and they're just concealing that. Do you see that? Or statistically, we know less people are getting help for it, so that would kind of make sense. But
So here's what I find. So because I'm thinking so we're going to use alcohol right now just as an example. I think of alcohol as a treatment for stress. Okay. So then the question is the treatment causing side effects? So I'll give you an example. So I was working at a nursing home, and this guy who was like in his 60s came in because he'd had pneumonia and was coming to get stronger. And so on his ER record, it said that he drinks 4 drinks a night. So when his regular doctor came in to see him in the nursing home, he came and said, "Bill, you're an alcoholic." And Bill's like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" He goes, "You're an alcoholic. You drink 4 drinks a night." He goes, "Well, I'm working every day and alcohol's not causing a problem. My wife is not complaining. I don't drive when I'm drinking, so I don't have any DUIs. So where the hell do you get off telling me that I'm alcoholic?" And the guy goes, "Oh, the doctor said you're just in denial. You're an alcoholic. You just have to admit it." And the patient fired him. And I'm like, because this is why. Because you're telling him that he is an alcoholic with no proof. And then you're telling him that he has to then accept that he's got a lifelong disease that he can't ever cure. Like, who wants that? No, Get out of here. So they brought me in and I said, "Okay, here's the deal. Like, it says you drink 4 drinks a night. That puts you in the 90th percentile for alcohol consumption in our country." And he's like, "Wait, what? 90th percentile?" I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty high. It's a lot, right?" I go, "And you're not having problems right now. Good for you. But at your age in 60s, alcohol affects your liver, it affects your brain, it affects your heart, right? It does a lot of bad things to you." And here's what I said to him. "Do you really think you need 4 drinks a night?" And he sat for a second. He goes, so here's the key. Now we're having a dialogue, right? And he's like, "Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I need to drink 4 drinks a night." He goes, "I've been working all day and I'm a little stressed out and it helps me relax." I go, "I get that. You think 1 drink would get you relaxed? Maybe 2. He goes, "You know what? Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I don't need 4. That's crazy." So he left saying, "I'm going to cut down to 1 or 2 drinks." Now, whether he did or not, I don't know. But that's the point, right? Because now I'm having a dialogue. So he's not kicking me out of the room because I'm not trying to give him a lifelong disease. I'm saying to you, you got stress. You found something that worked. It's not causing problems right now, but it has the potential to cause problems at the quantity that you're using. So how about we cut down on the quantity and see if you can't still get the same benefit and then not worry about the side effects that come down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart approach and definitely more digestible to the masses. So what have your patients taught you about the human capacity to change?
Well, okay. So one of the strengths of humans is that we are amazing at learning. Like, we're like super, super fast, right? So like I watch my grandkids and like, I just say something like, we were doing something stupid. We're in a park, right? And I'm showing her how to break a stick. Like, you just put it up on a rock and you step on it and break it, right? It took her 1 second to learn how to do that. What? Like, amazing, right? If I was trying to teach a dog, they would never get that. And a guinea pig, no, don't even try, right? So it's like humans are incredible at learning. But here's the 2 problems. One is that learning something and making it automatic are 2 different things. Okay, that's 1. 2 is that we have an identity and we have these beliefs in our head and they're stuck in there. And so we can change them, but we're reluctant to do it because that we're like basing our worth on those things that are in our head. So when somebody starts monkeying around with them, they're like, "Whoa, back up, Jack," right? So I just finished reading this book called The Real You. And it's a great story. Here's the story he tells. His daughter is 21 and she's with her friend and they want to get in a club. So they go to the club and the bouncer goes, "Nope, can't come in because you got yoga pants on." So she goes around the corner and she takes her friend's jacket and fashions it into a skirt, comes back to the bouncer, goes, "Okay, yeah, you can come in now." And he's like, that's our brain. So our brain is a bouncer that says, "No, that idea doesn't fit with what's inside. You can't come in." Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So you have to figure out a way to get around the bouncer. But here's the stupid part. We own the club. It's our club. Like, what the heck? Our bouncer's not letting our own club. That's crazy, right? So he goes, so this is what he says in his book is you have to figure out how to get your idea past the bouncer so they can get in and you can talk to the manager like, hey, look, I'm the owner and I want to change what the bouncer thinks. So here's what I see. When people have low self-esteem and someone comes to them and says, hey, you're a really good person. They're like, yeah, no, you can't come in. That doesn't fit. If somebody comes along and says, you suck. And you're like, ugh, I don't like hearing that, but yeah, sure, come on in. And you're like, wait, what? Right? So you have to figure out how to get these more positive ideas past your bouncer. That becomes the critical thing. And that's not always so easy, which is why a lot of people end up in therapy for years and why a lot of people end up in a stress reducer loop because they don't know what to do. So they can't get into clubs. So they're like drinking themselves so they don't have to worry about going in the club. Right. So what I found is then using that guy's work, which was the extension of what I've been doing. It's like, oh, now I know what to do. Right. So when people come in and they're stressed, their stress isn't just necessarily coming from today. Like, oh, I got a bill due and I don't have the money to pay it. Yeah. Okay. That's a stress. Literally, most of their stress might be coming from their past, some traumatic event that they've had in the past. It could be coming from some core belief, like, I'm not a good person, or I don't feel safe, or I don't have any control over a situation. Those are all the stresses. Or it could be a future stress, like, I'm worried this is going to happen. I'm worried that's going to happen. So the stresses come from all over the place. And so when I say reduce your stress, I'm talking about reducing it in all three tenses, because that's what you need. So as you feel less stress, then getting out of your stress reducer loop gets a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. What gives you hope when it comes to addiction and recovery today with everything you've learned and everything you're teaching?
Well, I know in my own office, I took care of 100 patients with opioid abuse, right? And I was getting more than a 95% success rate because I was using Suboxone as a treatment. So what I would say to them is, look, you got this treatment that's crazy, lethal side effects, heroin, right? It's working. When you're high, you feel good, right? But then you come down and you go into withdrawal and you got needle marks and you're trying to get arrested and somebody wants to turn in your drug dealer, blah, 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 right? So I'm going to give you this medicine that gives you some of the benefits, but not the side effects. So I'm going to give you this Suboxone that will keep you from going to withdrawal. It's legal. You know exactly what you're getting. The government helps pay for it because you're on assistance, blah, 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 right? But while you're taking that, then I'm going to teach you how to have less stress so that then you won't need that either, because Suboxone doesn't have no side effects. I mean, you still have to pay for it. You have to make sure the pharmacy is going to get it. If you don't take the Suboxone, you're going to go into withdrawal eventually. And it's like, so it's a transitional treatment.
Right.
So I'm going from heroin, transitioning to Suboxone, to transitioning off. But that getting off is only when the person's ready, because their stress reducers are in place. They've gone through the WIN system. They got wisdom. They got insight. They've got a new track, and they've practiced it till it's automatic. Then they're ready to get off that too. So I know that it can work. I just got to get it in people's hands so they can use it.
Yeah. So how do you think that this work has changed your own understanding of happiness?
Oh, a lot, right? So learning about the happy place really changed what I thought about happiness. Because here's what I would do a seminar, and I'd say, okay, tell me where your happy place is. And somebody go, oh, I like the beach. And I'm like, well, that's awesome, right? So how often do you get to go to the beach? And they go, I don't know, a couple times a year. I'm like, well, that's nice. That means 50 times a year you're not in a happy place. What the heck? That sucks, right? So what I realized, when you start looking at what your happy place is and the ingredients that go into it, it's gratitude. It's feeling fulfilled. It's feeling pleasure and love. It's feeling safe and feeling connected and accepted and appreciated and having hope. You're like, and then feeling contented and peaceful. What a nice place. And it's in your pocket. You can take it out whenever you want. How freaking awesome is that? So I found if I was yelling at my kids, I'm like, you dumb little blah, blah, blah. Why did you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, wait, let me take my happy place out and go, oh, yeah, I'm grateful that I have kids. Yay. And I'm learning how to be a better parent. Oh, and that's right. And I feel fulfilled because I'm being a parent. And so it's like my happy place is with me whenever it's right there.
Yeah, accessible. I'm sure that's very important.
That's a good word. I like that.
So, if you could leave our audience with one message about stress, addiction, and the possibility of change, what would it be?
So what I would say to people is, look, your stresses are coming from the side effects to your skills. So let's figure out a way to get rid of some of the side effects so you have less stress. And then you've always figured out, you're smart enough, you figured out some way to reduce your stress. But then you also were smart enough to realize this stress reducer is starting to cause problems. I got to do something about it. That's where you might need some help. So you need wins. You need some wisdom. You need to have for how your brain works. You need some insight to attach the side effects to what you're doing. You need a new track that doesn't have the same side effects. And then you need a safe place where people aren't shaming you and throwing you in jail or locking you up in a rehab for a month. So that you can but you need someplace that's safe where you can then practice this new track till it becomes automatic. And then you'll be a different person. And then you get to see, because when you do the WINS program, you're going to learn how to have less stress. You're going to learn these core beliefs. You're going to have better self-esteem. You're going to feel like you're in more control. You're going to have all these good things that come from the program itself. And you won't be in that stress reducer loop anymore, which gives people what I call self-respect. Because respect is, are you doing things the right way? So most people, when they're in a loop, don't think they should be doing it. Like 90% of my smokers didn't think they should be smoking. So they were doing something that was reducing their self-respect. They were doing something they didn't think they should do. So when they stopped, it increased their self-esteem and their self-respect because now they're doing what they think they should be doing. And so people getting out of their loop is straightforward once you know what you're supposed to do. And the benefits, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I've seen people who are living in a tent now owning a rehab from this $1 million rehab. And you're like, yes, because these people are incredibly smart and resourceful. They've just gotten trapped in their treatment. So by getting rid of their treatment, then they're back to not just normal, they thrive.
Yeah. You know, I always say self-esteem comes from esteemable acts. And I love what you are doing. I think the world needs more of you and more compassion and more understanding and reducing the stigma and saying, you know, there's help available and it may not be easy, but it's certainly very simple.
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to share before we end our time here? You've been such a wonderful guest.
Yeah. I just want people to know that there's hope, that there is an answer out there and they just have to find the right answer. And then their life will turn around and get better. There's lots of ways to do this. My program is one of the ways. Just keep up your hope and don't resign yourself to being stuck forever.
Yeah, I think that as long as there's breath in you, there's hope for change.
Yeah, well, I tell people, I was like, there's no such thing as failure till you stop trying.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to say you want to get sober and you hasn't worked out 3 or 4 times, you're like, you didn't fail until you say, you know what? It's never going to get better. I'm just going to stop trying. So there's no failure. There's just learning. It's like, I learned that isn't working. I learned that's not working.
Well, it has been wonderful getting to know you, understanding what your mission is. And I just want to thank you for taking time out to speak with our audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And again, hopefully we helped that one person today. So
I think we might just accomplish that. Take care, Dr. Sprouse.
Thank you.